The telegraph key clicked beneath Miriam Zimmerman's fingertips at precisely 6 minutes past 3 in the afternoon, and the message that came through would change her life forever, though she did not know it yet, as she transcribed the dots and dashes into words that made her heart ache with their beauty. She sat in the cramped telegraph office in Hachita, New Mexico, a speck of civilization clinging to existence in the vast Hidalgo County desert, where the sun beat down mercilessly, and the railroad tracks stretched like ribbons of steel across an endless expanse of sand and scrub brush. The year was 1887, and Miriam had been the town's telegraph operator for 3 years, ever since her father had died of consumption and left her alone at 18 with nothing but his training and a small room above the general store. Now 21, she had grown accustomed to the solitude, to the clicking of the telegraph, to the parade of other people's words passing through her fingers. She read every message that came through. It was not really proper, perhaps, but there was no one to tell her otherwise, and the words were her only companions in the long stretches between trains. She read business correspondence from merchants in Silver City, urgent summons from doctors in Deeming, and most precious of all, the love letters. Young men working the cattle ranches would send telegrams to sweethearts back east, their feelings compressed into expensive dots and dashes. Wives separated from husbands by business or misfortune would send tender words across the wires. Miriam had read them all, and each one was a small window into a life less lonely than hers. The message she transcribed that September afternoon was from a man named Thomas Whitmore in Lordsburg, sending words to his intended in Kansas City. My dearest Elizabeth, the desert blooms with your memory. Each sunrise brings me closer to the day I can call you wife. Wait for me as the earth waits for rain, knowing the waiting makes the joy sweeter. Your devoted Thomas. Miriam copied the words onto the message form with her careful script, her throat tight. She had never received such words. She had never received any words of love at all. The young men in Hachita were few, and they saw her as a fixture of the telegraph office, as much a part of the equipment as the key itself. She was plain, she knew, with brown hair that refused to hold a curl and gray eyes set in an unremarkable face. Her hands were ink-stained, her dresses practical and worn. She was useful, efficient, forgettable. She posted the telegram in the box outside the office for the afternoon stage and returned to her desk. The sun slanted through the window, illuminating dust motes in golden columns. She pulled out her lunch, bread and cheese wrapped in cloth, and ate mechanically while reviewing the day's transmissions in her log. The telegraph clicked again. She set down her bread and placed her fingers on the key, ready to transcribe. The message came through in the practiced rhythm of an experienced sender, smooth and sure. She wrote the letters as they formed. To Miriam Zimmerman, telegraph operator, Hachita, New Mexico. Her pencil stopped. She stared at her own name on the paper, certain she had made an error. No one sent her telegrams. No one knew she existed beyond her function. She listened more carefully as the message continued. I do not know your face, but I know your hand. You have sent my words across the wires for 2 years now, always accurate, always swift. I have sent messages to family, to business associates, to the bank. But I have never sent one to you. This seems a failure on my part. I wonder if you read these words as they pass through. I wonder if you are young or old, happy or lonesome. I wonder if anyone sends beautiful words to you. I am guessing they do not, or you would not be there at your post at all hours, faithful as the sun. So here are some words for you. Whoever you are seen. Respectfully, Noah Northwood, Circle N Ranch. Miriam's hands trembled as she finished transcribing. She read the message 3 times, certain she had misunderstood, but the words remained the same. Noah Northwood. She knew the name. The Circle N was a large cattle operation about 15 miles northeast of town, and Noah Northwood sent and received telegrams regularly, all business, all brief. She had never met him, never seen him, though she knew from the messages that he ran the ranch with his 2 brothers after their father's death. She pressed her fingers to her lips, feeling heat rise in her cheeks. Someone had noticed her. Someone had thought of her. The words were not declarations of love like the ones she transcribed, but they were kind, and they were hers. She did not know what to do with the message. Protocol dictated she file it with the others, but this was different. This was personal. She folded it carefully and slipped it into the pocket of her dress, where it rested against her heart like a secret. The rest of the day passed in a haze. She sent messages, received messages, logged everything dutifully, but her mind kept returning to the telegram in her pocket. Why had he sent it? What did he expect from her? Should she respond? When she closed the office at 6 and climbed the narrow stairs to her room, she lit the lamp and pulled out the telegram, reading it again in the amber light. You are seen. 2 words that meant everything to someone who had felt invisible for so long. She sat at her small writing desk and pulled out a sheet of paper. Then she hesitated. What could she say? How did one respond to such unexpected kindness? She was not skilled in the language of courtship, had never practiced the art of flirtation. She knew only the plain truth. Finally, she wrote, Mr. Northwood, your telegram arrived today and surprised me greatly. You are correct that no one sends me beautiful words. You are also correct that I read the messages that pass through my hands. I have read your business correspondence for 2 years and found it always clear and fair. I do not know why you chose to write to me, but I thank you for it. I am neither young nor old, neither entirely happy nor entirely lonesome. I am simply here doing my work, but it is kind of you to notice. Respectfully, Miriam Zimmerman. She read it over, decided it was too formal, then decided it was all she could manage. In the morning she would send it. The thought made her stomach flutter with something between excitement and terror. Sleep came slowly that night. She lay in her narrow bed listening to the distant howl of coyotes and imagined what Noah Northwood might look like. Was he young or old? The ranch had belonged to his father, so he could be anywhere from 20 to 50. Was he married? She had never sent messages suggesting a wife, but that meant nothing. Was he handsome? That mattered less than whether he was kind, but she could not help wondering. Morning came with the brutal brightness that characterized the desert. Miriam washed her face in the basin, dressed in her gray cotton work dress, and went down to open the office. Her first task, even before the official opening time of 7, was to send her response. Her fingers shook slightly as she keyed in the message, sending it out across the wires to the relay station that would route it to the Circle N. When it was done, she felt both relief and regret. There. It was answered. Whatever came of it would come. Nothing came for 3 days. Miriam went about her work with determined focus, refusing to let herself hope for anything more. He had sent a kind message. She had responded appropriately, and that was the end of it. She should be grateful for that small moment of connection and expect nothing more. On the 4th day, another telegram arrived addressed to her. Miss Zimmerman, your response pleased me more than you might guess. I am glad to have a name to attach to the efficient hand I have known through the wires. I am 26 years old and run the Circle N with my brothers, though most of the responsibility falls to me as the eldest. I am not married and have no prospects, as I spend my days with cattle and horses rather than people. I suspect we have loneliness in common. Would it be presumptuous to continue this correspondence? I find myself curious about the woman who reads everyone's words but receives so few of her own. Yours, Noah Northwood. 26, only 5 years older than herself, not married. Miriam pressed the telegram to her chest and allowed herself a smile. She sent a response within the hour. Mr. Northwood, I would welcome continued correspondence. I am 21 years old and have operated this telegraph office since my father's death 3 years ago. I live alone and have few acquaintances in town. The messages I transcribe are my window to a larger world. I confess I am curious about you as well. What is it like to run a ranch? I have never been more than a few miles from Hatchita. Yours, Miriam Zimmerman. Thus began an exchange that brightened Miriam's days like nothing had in years. Noah wrote to her every few days, sometimes more often. His messages were unlike the business telegrams she was accustomed to. He wrote about the ranch, about the challenges of keeping cattle alive in the harsh desert climate, about the beauty of the landscape that most people found desolate. He wrote about his brothers, Marcus and Martin, who helped run the operation but had none of his passion for it. He wrote about his dreams of expanding the ranch, of building something that would last beyond his lifetime. Miriam found herself writing back with equal candor. She told him about the loneliness of her position, about how she had taught herself to find companionship in books ordered from catalogs, in the sky's endless variations, in the small dramas of Hatchita's 200 residents. She told him about reading the love letters that passed through and wondering if she would ever receive one herself. You are receiving them now, he wrote back. Perhaps not in the flowery language of those Eastern gentlemen, but these words are meant for you alone, and they are written with growing affection. I think of you there in your office, fingers flying over the keys, and I find myself wanting to know everything about you. What is your favorite book? What do you think about in the quiet hours? What do you want from life that you do not have? She answered honestly. My favorite book is Jane Eyre because she refuses to settle for less than she deserves. In quiet hours, I think about all the places I will never see and all the experiences I will never have. What I want from life is simple, to matter to someone, to be more than useful, to be cherished. His response came the same day. You matter to me, Miss Zimmerman. More than I can adequately express through these wires. I would like to meet you if you would permit it. I could ride into Hatchita on Sunday. We could take a walk, talk face to face rather than through dots and dashes. Would that be acceptable? Miriam's heart raced as she read the words. Sunday was 3 days away. 3 days to prepare herself to wonder, to worry. She was no beauty, and he would see that immediately. What if he was disappointed? What if the connection they had built through telegrams evaporated when confronted with reality? But what if it did not? She sent her response. Yes, Sunday at 2 o'clock. I will meet you in front of the telegraph office. The 3 days passed with agonizing slowness. Miriam washed her best dress, a pale blue cotton with white trim that she had not worn in months. She attempted to curl her hair with rags and managed to coax some waves into the usually stubborn strands. She polished her boots and cleaned her room, though there was no reason he would see it. She was nervous in a way she had never been before, her stomach in constant turmoil, her mind racing through every possible outcome. Saturday night, she barely slept. Sunday morning, she attended the small church service in the town's only chapel, barely hearing the sermon. She ate no lunch, too nervous to contemplate food. At 1:30, she dressed with trembling hands, checked her appearance in the small mirror a dozen times, and finally descended to the street. Hatchita on a Sunday afternoon was quiet, most residents resting in the heat of the day. Miriam stood in the shade of the telegraph office's awning, her hands clasped tightly in front of her. The desert stretched endlessly in all directions, shimmering in the heat. She watched the road from the northeast, looking for a rider. At precisely 2 o'clock, she saw him. A single horseman approached at an easy canter, sitting tall in the saddle. As he drew closer, Miriam's breath caught. Noah Northwood was handsome in the way of men shaped by hard work and harsh conditions, all lean muscle and sun-browned skin. He wore clean denim trousers and a light blue shirt, a bandana around his neck, and a wide-brimmed hat that shaded his face. When he dismounted in front of her and removed the hat, she saw dark hair, strong features, and the most remarkable blue eyes she had ever seen. He looked at her for a long moment, and she saw surprise flicker across his face. Not disappointment, she thought, but genuine surprise. "Miss Zimmerman," he said, his voice deeper than she had imagined, rough from years of shouting orders across open range. "Mr. Northwood," she replied, pleased that her voice remained steady. "You are not what I expected," he said, then seemed to realize how that sounded. "I mean, you are younger than I imagined, prettier too." Heat flooded her cheeks. "I am quite plain, Mr. Northwood." "You need not say otherwise." "I disagree," he said firmly, "but I suppose we will have time to debate that. Would you walk with me? I promise I do not bite, though I have been told I smell of horse." She laughed, surprising herself. "I do not mind. Everything in Hatchita smells of dust anyway." They walked down the main street, such as it was, past the general store and the saloon and the small hotel that mostly served railroad workers. Noah led his horse, a patient bay gelding that plodded along behind them. At first they were both awkward, the easy flow of their written correspondence not translating immediately to spoken words. But gradually, as they walked beyond the edge of town into the scrubland, the conversation began to flow. "The ranch is hard work," Noah said when she asked about it. "Harder than I expected when my father died and left it to me and my brothers. We have 300 head of cattle, which sounds like a lot until you are trying to find water for them in a drought. The land is beautiful but unforgiving. One mistake can cost you everything. Why do you stay?" Miriam asked. "You could sell the ranch, go somewhere easier." He shook his head. "This land gets in your blood. My father built something here from nothing. I want to honor that, expand it, make it into something bigger. And where would I go? The East. I would die of boredom in a city. This is where I belong, even when it is difficult." "I understand that," Miriam said. "People tell me I should leave Hatchita, go to a bigger town where there are more opportunities. But this is where my father brought me, where he taught me his trade. Leaving feels like abandoning him." Noah nodded. "We are both loyal to ghosts." They walked for an hour, following no particular path, just wandering through the desert landscape. Noah pointed out plants she had never noticed, told her which were poisonous and which could be eaten in desperation. He showed her tracks in the dust, teaching her to distinguish between a coyote and a fox, between a rabbit and a roadrunner. The desert she had thought she knew revealed itself as a much richer, more complex place through his eyes. When they finally turned back toward town, the sun was lowering toward the western horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. Noah stopped and looked at her directly. "I would like to see you again, Miss Zimmerman, if you are willing." "I am willing," she said. "Very willing." "I cannot come to town every week," he said. "The ranch demands too much, but I could come every other Sunday, perhaps, and we can continue riding." "I would like that." He smiled, and the expression transformed his serious face into something warm and open. "I am glad I sent that first telegram." "So am I." He helped her back onto the wooden sidewalk in front of the telegraph office, his hand strong and warm around hers. Then he mounted his horse, settled his hat back on his head, and looked down at her. "Until next Sunday, Miss Zimmerman." "Miriam," she said. "Please call me Miriam." "Miriam," he repeated, as if testing the name. "Until next Sunday, Miriam, and you should call me Noah." She watched him ride away until he was just a dark speck against the vast landscape, then climbed the stairs to her room with a heart so full it seemed impossible that her chest could contain it. Their courtship unfolded slowly, constrained by distance and duty but deepening with each encounter. Every other Sunday, Noah rode into Hachita and they walked together, talking about everything and nothing. In between, telegrams flew back and forth, sometimes brief messages about daily life, sometimes longer thoughts about dreams and fears and hopes. Miriam learned that Noah had been raised by a hard father who believed sentiment was weakness, that his mother had died when he was 12, that he had taught himself to read using his mother's Bible. He learned that Miriam's mother had died when she was born, that her father had been a gentle, scholarly man ill-suited to the harsh Western territories, but determined to make a life there, that she had inherited his love of books and his quiet nature. "You would have liked my father," she told Noah one Sunday as they sat on a rock outcropping overlooking the town. October had brought slightly cooler temperatures, making the desert almost pleasant. He was kind. He never raised his voice, never lost his patience. Even when he was dying, he worried more about me than himself. "He raised a remarkable daughter," Noah said. "He should be proud. I hope he would be. I try to live in a way that would honor him." Noah reached over and took her hand the first time he had done so. His palm was calloused from rope and reins, but his grip was gentle. "You honor him every day, Miriam. I am certain of it." She looked down at their joined hands, marveling at the simple intimacy of it. "Noah, what do you want from this? From us?" He did not pretend to misunderstand. "I want everything, eventually. I want to court you properly, take the time to know you fully. Then, if you will have me, I want to marry you. I want to bring you to the ranch, build you a proper house, give you a life that is more than transcribing other people's words. But I am in no rush. I will wait as long as you need." Her heart hammered in her chest. "I do not need much time to know my own mind. I have been watching people fall in love through telegrams for years. I know what it looks like. I know what it feels like now, too." "And what does it feel like?" he asked quietly. "Like coming home," she said. "Like being seen. Like mattering." He lifted her hand to his lips and kissed her knuckles, a gesture so tender it brought tears to her eyes. "You matter, Miriam Zimmerman. You matter more than anything." As autumn progressed toward winter, their relationship deepened. Noah began coming to town more frequently, making the 30-mile round trip even when it was inconvenient, because being apart had become more difficult than the ride. Miriam found herself watching the clock on days when he was expected, unable to focus on her work, her heart racing at every sound that might be his arrival. The people of Hachita noticed, of course. In a town of 200 souls, nothing remained secret for long. Mrs. Patterson, who ran the general store, asked pointed questions about Miriam's gentleman caller. The saloon keeper, a gruff man named Jim who had always been kind to her, asked if Noah's intentions were honorable. The minister's wife suggested that perhaps it was time to think about what would happen to the telegraph office if Miriam were to marry and leave. It was this last comment that brought Miriam up short. She had not thought about the practicalities. If she married Noah, she would leave Hachita, leave the telegraph office. Who would replace her? The town needed a telegraph operator for the railroad to maintain its stop here. Without the stop, the town would wither and die. She mentioned this concern to Noah during one of his visits, and he frowned thoughtfully. "Could you train someone?" he asked. "Teach them what your father taught you. Perhaps if I could find someone willing to learn, but it takes time to become proficient." "Then we have time," he said. "I told you I would not rush you. We can wait until everything is properly arranged." But Miriam found she did not want to wait. The weeks of courtship had shown her everything she needed to know about Noah Northwood. He was steady and honest and kind. He worked hard and loved deeply. He saw her not as a convenient telegraph operator, but as a woman worth cherishing. She wanted to begin their life together, wanted to see the ranch he spoke of so often, wanted to wake up beside him and build something lasting. In early November, a solution presented itself in an unexpected form. A young man named Samuel Pierce arrived on the afternoon train, looking exhausted and desperate. He came to the telegraph office to send a message to his sister in Tucson, explaining that he was stranded in Hachita with no money and no prospects. Miriam sent the message and then, on impulse, asked, "Can you read and write, Mr. Pierce?" "Yes, madam. Had schooling through 8th grade." "Have you ever worked with telegraph equipment?" "No, madam, but I am quick to learn." "Why do you ask?" Miriam made a decision that would change both their lives. "I am looking to train a replacement. If you are willing to work for room and board while you learn, I can teach you to operate a telegraph. It would take several months, but at the end, you would have a skilled trade and a position." Samuel's face lit up with hope. "Are you serious, madam? I would be more grateful than I can say." So Samuel Pierce became Miriam's apprentice. He slept on a cot in the back room of the telegraph office and took his meals at the hotel in exchange for washing dishes. Every day, Miriam taught him the Morse code, the proper operation of the equipment, the protocols and procedures. He was bright and motivated, and he learned quickly. Noah was pleased with this development. "Does this mean you will marry me sooner rather than later?" he asked during his Sunday visit in late November. "Are you asking me to marry you?" Miriam replied, her heart racing. He took both her hands in his. "I suppose I am. Miriam Zimmerman, would you do me the honor of becoming my wife?" "I do not have much to offer beyond hard work and an uncertain future on a ranch in the middle of nowhere. But I can promise you that I will spend every day trying to make you happy, trying to be worthy of you." "Yes," she said without hesitation. "Yes, I will marry you." He pulled her into his arms and kissed her for the first time, and it was everything she had hoped it would be. His lips were warm and firm, and his arms around her made her feel safe and cherished and home. They were married on a cold January afternoon in 1888, in the small chapel in Hachita, with the entire town in attendance. Miriam wore a simple white dress that Mrs. Patterson had helped her sew, and Noah wore a new suit ordered from a catalog. Samuel Pierce stood as witness, proud of his role in making the marriage possible. The minister's wife cried throughout the ceremony, and even gruff Jim from the saloon looked misty-eyed. After the ceremony, there was a small celebration in the hotel dining room. The townspeople had pitched in to provide food and drink, their way of showing their affection for the quiet telegraph operator who had served them faithfully for 3 years. Miriam was overwhelmed by the outpouring of goodwill, realizing for the first time how much she had meant to people who she thought barely noticed her. As the sun set, Noah helped Miriam into the wagon he had driven to town. Her few belongings were already packed in the back. Samuel stood in front of the telegraph office, waving goodbye, ready to begin his new role. The ride to the Circle N took 3 hours in the darkness, following roads that Noah knew by feel as much as sight. Miriam sat close beside him, wrapped in blankets against the January cold, her head resting on his shoulder. "Are you nervous?" Noah asked as they crossed into ranch land. "A little," she admitted. "I have never lived on a ranch. I do not know what will be expected of me." "Nothing will be expected except that you be yourself," he said. "The ranch is rough, Miriam. The house is small and needs work. My brothers are not the most refined company, but it will be ours, and we will make it into something better together." The ranch house materialized out of the darkness, a low adobe structure with a wide porch. Lamplight glowed in the windows, and smoke curled from the chimney. As they pulled up, the door opened and two men emerged, clearly Noah's brothers. They were younger than Noah, in their early 20s, with the same lean build and sun-weathered faces. "Welcome home, brother," the taller one said, "and welcome to you, sister. Miriam, these are my brothers, Marcus and Martin. They promised to be on their best behavior." Marcus grinned. "We cleaned the house and everything. That is about as good as our behavior gets." Despite her nervousness, Miriam laughed. The brothers helped carry her belongings inside, then tactfully excused themselves to the bunkhouse, leaving Noah and Miriam alone in their new home. The house was indeed small, just 4 rooms. A main living area with a kitchen, 2 bedrooms, and a small washroom. But it was clean and warm, with a fire crackling in the stone fireplace. Noah had clearly made an effort, placing wildflowers in a jar on the table and hanging fresh curtains in the windows. "It is not much," he said, watching her anxiously. "It is perfect," she said honestly. "It is ours. That makes it perfect." That night, as they lay together in the bedroom that was now theirs, Noah held her close and whispered, "I will make you happy, Miriam. I swear it." "You already have," she whispered back. The early months of their marriage were an adjustment. Miriam had to learn the rhythms of ranch life, so different from the regulated schedule of the telegraph office. She woke before dawn to make breakfast for Noah and his brothers, spent her days learning to manage a household with limited resources, and fell into bed exhausted each night. The work was harder than anything she had done before, but it was also satisfying in a way that transcribing other people's words had never been. Noah was patient with her mistakes, praising her successes and helping her through the failures. When she burned her first attempt at baking bread, he ate it anyway, claiming it was not that bad even as he struggled to chew. When she accidentally let the chickens out of their coop and spent an hour chasing them, he laughed and helped her round them up. When she cried from frustration after a particularly difficult day, he held her and reminded her that she was learning, that no one expected perfection. Slowly, she found her rhythm. She learned to cook on the wood stove, to preserve food for the lean months, to mend the endless tears and rips that hard work inflicted on clothing. She learned the names of the horses and cattle, learned to recognize the signs of sickness or injury in the animals. She even learned to ride, though she was never as comfortable on horseback as Noah. But more than learning the practical skills, she learned what it meant to be part of a partnership. Noah consulted her on decisions about the ranch, valued her opinions, listened to her ideas. When she suggested they could make extra income by taking in laundry from railroad workers passing through, he helped her build a second fire pit and strung clotheslines across the yard. When she proposed they plant a larger vegetable garden, he dug the irrigation ditches himself. In return, she supported him through the challenges of ranching. When a late spring blizzard killed a dozen cattle, she sat with him through the night as he mourned the loss. When tensions with neighboring ranchers over water rights threatened to escalate into violence, she helped him craft a compromise that satisfied everyone. When exhaustion and stress made him short-tempered, she gave him space and patience. Marcus and Martin, initially awkward around her, gradually became like the brothers she had never had. Marcus was the jokester, always ready with a quip or a prank, while Martin was quiet and thoughtful, reminding her of her father. They treated her with respect and growing affection, and she grew to care for them deeply. By summer, Miriam felt truly at home on the Circle N. The ranch was thriving under Noah's management, the cattle healthy and the land productive despite the harsh conditions. The small income from Miriam's laundry service and garden had allowed them to make improvements to the house, adding a proper pantry and enlarging the kitchen. In August, Miriam realized she was pregnant. She had suspected for a few weeks, but had waited to be certain before telling Noah. When she finally shared the news one evening as they sat on the porch watching the sunset, his reaction was everything she could have hoped for. "A baby," he said, his voice filled with wonder. "We are going to have a baby in late winter or early spring," she confirmed. "Are you happy?" He pulled her into his arms, holding her so tightly she could barely breathe. "Happy does not begin to cover it. Miriam, you have given me everything. A home, a partnership, and now a child. I do not know what I did to deserve you. You saw me," she said simply. "When no one else did, you saw me." The pregnancy progressed smoothly through fall and into winter. Noah became impossibly protective, trying to prevent Miriam from doing any heavy work. She had to fight to maintain some independence, insisting she was pregnant, not incapacitated. Marcus and Martin were excited about becoming uncles and took to checking on Miriam constantly, which she found both endearing and slightly annoying. As winter deepened, Miriam found herself thinking about the telegraph office in Hachita, about the life she had left behind. She wondered how Samuel was managing, whether the town was thriving. In early February, a telegram arrived at the ranch, delivered by a rider from town. It was from Samuel, congratulating them on their marriage and informing them that he had been officially appointed as the permanent telegraph operator for Hachita. "He also says the town is doing well and everyone asks after you," Noah read aloud. "Mrs. Patterson wants to know if you need anything for the baby." Miriam smiled, touched by the message. "It is kind of them to remember me." "You made an impression on that town, whether you realized it or not," Noah said, "just as you have made an impression on this ranch. Everyone who meets you is better for it." The baby arrived on a cold March night in 1889, after a labor that lasted nearly 20 hours. The midwife, a capable woman named Mrs. Rodriguez from a neighboring ranch, guided Miriam through the ordeal with firm competence. Noah paced outside the bedroom, nearly wearing a path in the floor, while Marcus and Martin tried unsuccessfully to distract him with card games. When the baby's cry finally pierced the night, Noah burst into the room without waiting for permission. Miriam lay exhausted but radiant in the bed, holding a small bundle wrapped in blankets. "A son," she said, her voice weak but filled with joy. "We have a son." Noah approached reverently, looking down at the tiny red face of his child. The baby had dark hair like his father and was making his displeasure at the world known with lusty cries. "He has strong lungs," the midwife said approvingly. "That is a good sign." Noah touched one finger to the baby's tiny hand, and the infant's fingers curled around it instinctively. The expression on Noah's face was one of absolute wonder. "What should we name him?" Miriam asked. They had discussed names for months but had never quite settled on one. Now, looking at their son, Noah said, "Daniel, after your father, Daniel Northwood, if that pleases you." Tears filled Miriam's eyes. "It pleases me more than I can say." Little Daniel Northwood became the center of their world. Noah was a devoted father, spending every spare moment with his son. He would hold Daniel for hours, talking to him about the ranch, about the future they would build together. Miriam had never seen him so tender, so openly emotional. The ranch continued to prosper. By the time Daniel was a year old, Noah had expanded the herd to 500 head and purchased an additional 100 acres of land. The house had been enlarged with the addition of 2 more rooms, giving them space for the growing family. Marcus had married a young woman from Deeming, and Martin was courting a schoolteacher from Silver City. On their second wedding anniversary, Noah took Miriam into town for a rare visit. They brought Daniel with them, and the townspeople fawned over the chubby toddler. Samuel had done well with the telegraph office, and he was engaged to the minister's daughter. Mrs. Patterson had tears in her eyes when she saw Miriam with her baby. "You look happy, dear," the older woman said. "Truly happy." "I am," Miriam said, "happier than I ever imagined possible." That evening, as they prepared to return to the ranch, Noah took Miriam to the telegraph office. Samuel was just closing up for the day, and he greeted them warmly. "Would you mind if I sent one last telegram?" Noah asked him. "For old time's sake, of course not," Samuel said, gesturing to the equipment. "Go ahead." Noah sat at the telegraph key, his fingers finding the familiar rhythm easily. He keyed in a message while Miriam watched curiously. When he finished, he handed her the transcribed words. "To Miriam Northwood, Circle and Ranch. 2 years ago I sent words to a woman I had never met, hoping she might read them. She did, and those words led to the greatest happiness of my life. Today I send these words as a reminder. You are seen, you are cherished, you are loved beyond measure. Thank you for reading my letters. Thank you for becoming my wife. Thank you for giving me a life I did not dare dream of. Yours always, Noah Northwood." Miriam pressed the telegram to her heart, her eyes swimming with tears. "You still know how to make words beautiful." "Only when they are meant for you," he said, pulling her close. The years that followed brought their share of challenges and triumphs. A second child, a daughter they named Margaret, arrived in 1891. A third child, another son they called Samuel after the telegraph operator who had made their marriage possible, came in 1893. The ranch grew to become one of the most successful in Hidalgo County. Noah's hard work and Miriam's careful management creating something that would last for generations. But success was not without its difficulties. In 1894, a severe drought threatened to destroy everything they had built. Water sources dried up, and cattle began to die. Noah considered selling the herd at a loss, but Miriam suggested an alternative. Using her old telegraph connections, she reached out to ranchers in other regions, arranging to temporarily move their cattle to greener pastures. It was an expensive and risky venture, but it saved the herd and the ranch. In 1896, Marcus and his wife died in a tragic accident when their wagon overturned during a storm. Noah and Miriam took in their 3 orphan children, raising them alongside their own. The house was crowded and chaotic, but it was filled with love. Martin, who never did marry the schoolteacher, became the children's favorite uncle, always ready with stories and adventures. He took over management of the day-to-day operations of the ranch, as Noah focused more on the business side. And the partnership between the brothers grew stronger than ever. Through it all, Noah and Miriam's love only deepened. They still took walks together when time permitted, still shared their thoughts and dreams. Noah still sent her telegrams occasionally, romantic words transmitted across the wires to the ranch, even though she was just in the next room. She kept everyone, storing them in a box in their bedroom. On their 10th wedding anniversary, Miriam was 31 and Noah was 36. They stood on the porch of their now substantial ranch house, watching their children play in the yard. Daniel was 9, already showing signs of his father's ranching skills. Margaret was 7, bright and curious and fearless. Samuel was 5, gentle like the grandfather he was named for. "You ever regret leaving the telegraph office?" Noah asked, his arm around her waist. Miriam thought about those lonely years in Hachita, reading other people's love letters, wondering if she would ever receive one of her own. Then she looked at the life she had built, the family they had created, the love that surrounded her every day. "Not for a single moment," she said. "Reading those letters showed me what love could be, but living it with you has shown me it can be even better than anything written in dots and dashes." He kissed her temple. "I am glad I took the chance and sent that first telegram. So am I. You saw me when I thought I was invisible. You gave me words when I thought no one would ever write to me. You gave me everything." "We gave each other everything," he corrected. "That is what love is." As the sun set over the New Mexico desert, painting the sky in brilliant colors, Miriam reflected on the journey that had brought her here. A lonely telegraph operator who had read everyone else's love stories, until a cowboy had the courage to write one addressed to her. It had started with words traveling through wires, but it had grown into something solid and real and lasting. Years continued to pass, each bringing new joys and challenges. The children grew, eventually marrying and starting families of their own. Daniel took over the ranch from Noah, proving himself a capable and innovative manager. Margaret married a doctor and moved to Albuquerque, but visited often with her own growing family. Samuel became a teacher, carrying on the legacy of his gentle grandfather. Noah and Miriam grew old together, their hair turning silver, their faces lined by years of sun and laughter and hard work. But the spark between them never dimmed. Noah still looked at her with the same wonder he had shown when he first rode into Hachita to meet her. Miriam still felt her heart race when she heard his footsteps on the porch. In the spring of 1918, they celebrated their 30th wedding anniversary surrounded by children, grandchildren, and the extended family that had grown around them. The ranch was now run by the second generation, though Noah still offered advice and Miriam still managed the books. They had built something lasting, something that would continue long after they were gone. That evening, after the celebration had ended and the guests had departed, Noah presented Miriam with a gift. It was a leather-bound book, and when she opened it, she gasped. Inside were all the telegrams he had ever sent her, carefully preserved and mounted on the pages. The first one was there. "I do not know your face, but I know your hand." So were all the others that had followed during their courtship and marriage. "I had copies made of all of them," Noah explained. "I wanted you to have a record of how we began, how words traveling through wires brought two lonely people together." Miriam turned the pages carefully, reading messages she had not seen in years. Love letters written in dots and dashes, declarations made through telegraph keys, promises transmitted across the desert. Each one was a piece of their story, a stepping stone on the path that had led them to this moment. "These are more precious than gold," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "Thank you, Noah. Thank you, Miriam, for reading them, for responding, for taking a chance on a cowboy you had never met." She closed the book and set it carefully aside, then took his hand. "I would take that chance again in a heartbeat." They sat together on the porch as the stars emerged in the vast New Mexico sky, the same stars that had witnessed their first meeting, their wedding, the birth of their children, and every important moment in between. The desert spread before them, beautiful and harsh and eternal. "Do you remember what I wrote in that first telegram?" Noah asked. "That I wondered if anyone sent you beautiful words." "I remember," Miriam said, "and you have been sending them to me ever since." "Not just sending them," he said, "living them. Every day with you has been an attempt to make those words real, to show you that you are seen and valued and cherished." "You have succeeded beyond measure," she said softly. In the distance, coyotes called to each other, and the wind whispered through the scrub brush. The land that had seemed so empty and desolate when Miriam first arrived now felt full of life and possibility. She had found her place here, her purpose, her person. She had found home. As they grew even older, into their 50s and 60s, Noah and Miriam took on the role of family elders, the ones everyone came to for advice and wisdom. Their love story had become legendary in the family, told and retold to each new generation. The grandchildren loved to hear about how Grandpa had courted Grandma through telegraph messages, how she had read everyone's love letters until she received her own. The telegraph had long since been replaced by newer forms of communication, but the romance of those early messages remained. Miriam kept the leather-bound book of telegrams in a place of honor, and she would sometimes take it out and read through them, marveling at how far they had come from those tentative first exchanges. In 1928, on their 40th anniversary, the family threw a grand celebration at the ranch. More than 100 people attended, including descendants of the original Hatchita townspeople. Samuel Pierce, now in his 60s and long retired from the telegraph office, made the trip from Tucson, where he lived with his married daughter. Mrs. Patterson's granddaughter came, representing the family that had shown Miriam such kindness all those years ago. Noah stood to give a toast, his voice still strong despite his 66 years. 40 years ago, I took a chance and sent a telegram to a woman I had never met. I had been watching her work through the messages I sent, had admired her efficiency and dedication. But I wanted to know more. I wanted to reach out to make a connection. That telegram changed my life in ways I could never have imagined. He turned to Miriam, who sat beside him, still beautiful to him despite the silver hair and lined face. You gave me everything I did not know I was missing. A home filled with love and laughter, children who have made me proud, a legacy that will outlast us both. But more than that, you gave me yourself. You are the best thing that ever happened to me, Miriam Northwood. There was not a dry eye in the room as the family raised their glasses in celebration. Miriam stood and kissed her husband, and the room erupted in cheers. Later, as they prepared for bed in their quiet room, Noah said, "I meant every word of that toast. You are the best thing that ever happened to me." "And you are the best thing that ever happened to me," Miriam replied. "You saw a lonely telegraph operator and you reached out. You made me feel valuable and cherished. You gave me a life I did not dare dream of. We built it together," he said. "Everything we have, we built together." She nodded, thinking of all the years of partnership, of working side by side to create something lasting. "Together," she agreed. "That is the secret. Not just love, but partnership. Not just romance, but respect. Not just passion, but persistence." In the years that followed, as they moved into their 70s, Noah's health began to decline. The hard years of ranch work had taken their toll on his body, and he struggled with pain and fatigue. But his mind remained sharp, and his love for Miriam never wavered. Miriam cared for him tenderly, the same way he had cared for her through her own illnesses and difficulties over the years. She read to him from the books they both loved, reminded him of happy memories, and held his hand through the difficult days. One afternoon in the spring of 1933, as they sat together on the porch watching the grandchildren play, Noah said quietly, "I am not afraid of dying, Miriam. But I am afraid of leaving you." "Do not talk of such things," she said, though she knew the day was coming. "You still have years left." "Maybe," he said, "but I want you to know that if I could choose any life, any existence, I would choose this one, right here with you. Every challenge, every hardship, every moment of struggle was worth it because I got to experience it with you." Tears slipped down her cheeks. "I feel the same way. You made my life beautiful, Noah. You made me feel seen and loved and valued every single day. Promise me something," he said. "Anything. Promise me that when I am gone, you will not retreat into loneliness, that you will stay surrounded by family, by love, that you will remember the joy we shared and let it sustain you." "I promise," she said, though the words hurt to speak. but you are not leaving me yet. We still have time. And they did have time, several more years of it. Noah lived to see his 75th birthday, surrounded by 4 generations of family. He died peacefully in his sleep on a clear October night in 1936, with Miriam beside him as she had been for 48 years. The grief was overwhelming, but Miriam kept her promise. She stayed on the ranch, surrounded by family who loved and cared for her. She told stories about Noah to the great-grandchildren who had never known him in his prime, keeping his memory alive through words. She took out the book of telegrams and read them aloud, showing the young ones how love could begin with words traveling through wires and grow into something that lasted a lifetime. Miriam lived for 7 more years after Noah's death, years filled with family and memories and quiet contentment. She never remarried, never even considered it. Noah had been her one great love, and that was enough. More than enough. On a spring morning in 1943, Miriam passed away in her sleep at the age of 76. She was found with the book of telegrams open on her lap, turned to the first message Noah had ever sent her. "I do not know your face, but I know your hand." The family buried her beside Noah on a hill overlooking the ranch they had built together. The funeral was attended by hundreds of people, all whose lives had been touched by the remarkable woman who had started as a lonely telegraph operator and became the matriarch of one of the most respected families in New Mexico. At the service, Daniel, now in his 50s and still running the ranch, spoke about his parents' love. "My father used to say that the best decision he ever made was sending that first telegram to my mother. My mother would say that the best decision she ever made was responding. But I think the best thing they ever did was choose each other, every single day for 48 years. They showed all of us what love looks like when it is lived, not just spoken. They showed us what partnership means, what commitment means, what forever means." He held up the book of telegrams, carefully preserved. "These messages are part of our family history now. They remind us that love can begin in the most unexpected ways, that connection can span distances, that words have power. But more than that, they remind us that love is a choice we make every day. My parents chose each other, and in doing so, they built something beautiful that continues in all of us." The book was passed down through the generations, becoming a treasured family heirloom. Each new generation would read the telegrams and hear the story of how Noah and Miriam met, how words traveling through wires had brought together 2 people who might otherwise have remained forever separate. The circle and ranch continued to thrive, run by descendants who carried forward the values Noah and Miriam had instilled: hard work, integrity, love for the land, and devotion to family. The original ranch house was preserved and turned into a family museum of sorts, with the book of telegrams displayed in a place of honor alongside photographs and mementos from Noah and Miriam's life together. In the years that followed, the story of the telegraph operator and the cowboy became something of a legend in Hidalgo County. Young people would visit the old telegraph office in Hachita, now a historical site, and imagine Miriam sitting there, reading other people's love letters and yearning for her own. They would visit the ranch and see the life she and Noah had built from those tentative first messages. The story endured because it spoke to something fundamental in the human heart: the desire to be seen, to be known, to matter to someone. Miriam had spent years invisible, useful but unremarkable, reading about love without experiencing it. Noah had reached across the distance with nothing but words, taking a chance on a woman he had never met. And from that simple act of courage, from those dots and dashes transmitted across telegraph wires, had grown a love that lasted a lifetime and influenced generations. Their great-great-grandchildren would grow up hearing the story, would learn the lesson it taught. That love requires courage, that connection requires effort, that the best things in life are worth waiting for and working toward. They would look at old photographs of Noah and Miriam and see not just their ancestors, but an example of what love could be when it was built on mutual respect, shared values, and genuine partnership. The New Mexico desert remained as it had always been, vast and harsh and beautiful. But on the hill where Noah and Miriam were buried, wildflowers bloomed every spring, as if the land itself remembered the love story that had unfolded there. Visitors would sometimes come to pay their respects, leaving small stones on the graves as was the custom, and they would read the inscription carved into the shared headstone. Noah and Miriam Northwood. He saw her. She responded. Together they built a legacy of love. It was a simple epitaph for a simple beginning that had grown into something extraordinary. A cowboy had sent a telegram to a telegraph girl, and she had read it as she had read so many others. But this one was different. This one was addressed to her. And in responding, in taking her own chance, she had found everything she had ever wanted: to be seen, to be cherished, to matter. Their story became a testament to the power of words, to the importance of reaching out, to the magic that can happen when two people choose each other against all odds. It was a love story that began with dots and dashes, but grew into something as enduring as the desert itself, as constant as the stars above, as real and solid as the land they had claimed and cultivated. And in the end, it was a love story that reminded everyone who heard it that the greatest romances are not always the ones that begin with love at first sight, but the ones that begin with a simple choice to reach out, to connect, to see another person, and let yourself be seen in return. Noah had seen Miriam through her work, through the efficiency and dedication with which she transmitted everyone else's messages. And he had taken the time to send her a message of her own, to tell her she mattered. That one act of kindness, that one moment of courage, had changed two lives completely. It had created a family, built a legacy, and left a story that would be told for generations. Because in the end, love is not just about grand gestures or perfect moments. It is about choosing to see someone, choosing to reach out, choosing to build something together one day at a time, one message at a time, one choice at a time. Miriam had read every love letter that passed through her telegraph office, dreaming of the day someone would send one to her. Noah had sent that letter, and in doing so, had given her not just words but a lifetime of love. And that, in the end, was the greatest message of all.